All right. Hello, everyone. Like always, we're going to get started in a few minutes. So we'll just leave some time for everyone else to join in. All right. And for those of you who are who are joined in, let me know if you can see this sort of slideshow. All right. Sounds good. Looks like you guys can see it. As always, like as we're going through this, I might be going a little bit fast on some slides, a little bit slow on other slides. We'll be giving all these slides at the end of the whole Young Scholar program. We'll be giving all these slides to you guys, as well as the recordings and stuff as well. You can always access recording of the slideshow. So if you ever want to go back on sections and revisit them, you feel free to do that. And as you're going through this, if you have any questions that you guys want to ask, just put them into the chat or send them like a private message to me if you want to. And as I'm going through the presentation, or probably at the end, I'll try to answer as many of the questions as I can. And I'll also, since we are talking about ChatGPT today, after I go through the presentation, I'll actually be doing some demos about ChatGPT, using it and show you guys some of the cool uses you can have from it, and showcasing some of the things I'll be talking about in the presentation. All right, so I think I can go ahead and get started now. Let's jump right into it. We're going to be exploring sort of the power and the uses of ChatGPT. Disclaimer: we have in all of our slides. We're students. We do the best to make our slides as accurate as possible, but we can't always definitively make that happen. So just take our information with a grain of salt. And if you're ever noticing anything wrong, please feel free to let us know. We'll update it. So what we're going to be going over, at least in the slideshow point of things, is a little bit introduction to sort of OpenAI, ChatGPT in general, some of the components that make it up, how to incorporate it, its limitations, some of the impacts and ways it can be used. So sort of introduction to OpenAI and ChatGPT. So OpenAI is, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about it in the news and stuff recently, but OpenAI is the firm that basically, it's the firm that developed ChatGPT along with a lot of other GPT sort of AI models. And they're an artificial intelligence research laboratory, and they sort of develop and focus on building friendly AIs, and they align these with sort of human values or things that large-scale problems that we want to be solving with AI. And its founders are Elon Musk, like a lot of you guys know, Sam Altman, and a lot of other people who are just prominent either AI researchers or prominent tech evangelists, and people who have sort of had a lot of experience creating the most powerful tech products in the world, all coming together to make OpenAI. And some of the sort of highlights of ChatGPT is ChatGPT, what the GPT stands for is Generative Pre-trained Transformer, which is basically the technical term for the architecture on which ChatGPT is built. And the chat part as well. It's a chatbot. You type to it and it responds back. And it's a language model based on deep learning, which you mentioned a little bit in the AI presentation before, if you want to take a look at that. And it uses artificial neural networks or some really advanced AI to generate human-like text. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have played around with it. It really does do an amazing job at that. It's owned by OpenAI, headquartered in San Francisco, and it has a very large user base. Of millions of people across the world use it every single day, and hundreds of millions of people have used it individually across the time that it's been out. A lot of people use it in the US, but it's pretty spread out across the world. And that's another thing. It's open access. Anyone can use it, and it's free. So it's opening the sort of world of AI to a lot of people who weren't really have access to it. Some sort of major milestones in OpenAI's history in general, where OpenAI was founded. They released a sort of gem, which was their initial open source way of accessing some of their models. Then they released the idea of, hey, we found out this, we can do some really cool training with this new model called a generate pre-trained transformer, so GPT. You don't really have to know too much about how that sort of GPT model works. It's pretty complicated, but just know that it's built on that sort of transformer, a pre-trained transformer model. Then they moved from nonprofit to cap profit, released Dolly, and then, as you guys know, last year in November, they released ChatGPT. And eventually this year, they released ChatGPT 4. And this is sort of a little bit of like an overview of the structure of OpenAI. It's not really that relevant, but yeah, OpenAI originally started as a nonprofit, but eventually they split into like a nonprofit section and a for-profit section because they wanted the ability to make their models accessible to more people around the world. So in order to do so, they needed money, they needed investments. So they made a profit segment, and Microsoft bought in a large part of it. And now they're able to make these models accessible to a lot of people around the world and have the money to make it accessible for free. And in terms of like the ChatGPT specifically, or some of the research that OpenAI has done in 2023 and going into this year, is in November they launched ChatGPT. They sort of launched GPT Plus in February of this year, which is sort of a subscription model that they have for it. Microsoft partnered with OpenAI and released Bing Chat. For those of you guys who use Edge, you've probably seen it a lot. And from there, they launched an API for ChatGPT. Azure, sort of Microsoft's cloud, did a lot of things with ChatGPT. Then on March 14th, they launched GPT-4 for people who had ChatGPT Plus. They launched plugins, and from then on, now we're in sort of the modern day, and we're going to see more and more innovations that are coming out from the OpenAI side of things. I'll sort of talk about some of this ChatGPT-4, ChatGPT Plus, and plugins things when I sort of do a demo of a lot of things that ChatGPT can do. And some of the other things that OpenAI has released, not just ChatGPT, a lot of them are not really that relevant for a lot of general use cases, but one of the big ones is Dolly and Dolly 2, which basically takes in like any text you want to give into it. Let's say you want to make an image of a dog in a spacesuit on Mars. You can just type in, hey, I would like an image of a dog in a spacesuit on Mars, and it would just generate an image of a dog in a spacesuit on Mars. And it's pretty powerful to see how quickly and how amazingly it works. Some sort of facts about ChatGPT that are pretty interesting is that on December 8th, OpenAI said that ChatGPT reached 1 million users in 5 days after launching, which, to give you sort of a scale on how ridiculous like of a growth that is, Instagram took 2.5 months to reach 1 million users. Facebook took 10 months, and Netflix took 41 months to reach 1 million users. And OpenAI did that in 5 days with ChatGPT. There's a really, really large user base growing almost like 50 times per month in December, January, and February. And it costs a very large amount of money to keep ChatGPT running, especially keep it running for free. Costs $3 million about monthly to operate ChatGPT, and about $10,000 per day to operate ChatGPT, which is a crazy, crazy cost for a service that's provided for free. And that's what it needed the investment from Microsoft. So ChatGPT, one of the key things about it is it's what's called a large language model, an LLM. You'll see that term sort of thrown around a lot in the news lately. What it basically means is one of these really powerful, really advanced chatbots that have been releasing recently. And these sort of large language models are called large language models because they're trained on large amounts of data for a large amount of time, and they require a large amount of processing power to run. But the language models that they're able to create from them are just more advanced than anything we've ever seen before. And if some of you guys were here for the presentation on Intro to AI, we talked about natural language processing, which is basically the machine learning terminology for things that take in stuff that we speak, stuff that we type, and give us back human sort of readable text. It talks to us in the same language that we talk to it. And it's designed to generate human-like conversations and respond to our user input. So what can ChatGPT really do? I'm sure a lot of you guys have used it and you sort of seen the power that it can do, but in general, it can engage in conversations. You can talk to it about any sort of topic and it can respond to you, give you sort of insights, give you facts. It can answer general and specific questions. Like earlier, I was like, how do I explain what a transformer is in an easier way? It was able to answer that to me. It can assist in programming tasks. Let's say you want to make a Pac-Man game and you're just an introductory programmer. You don't really know a lot about how to sort of go about making games or what language to do it in. It can work through that entire process with you and end up allowing you to make a game that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to make if it wasn't for hours and hours of YouTube research, just all condensed into 1 or 2 prompts you ask ChatGPT. It can also assist in creative tasks, like it can help you write emails really well. It can help sort of revise your essays. It can do a lot of really powerful things and do so very, very easily, very quickly. So like some businesses, the way that we want to use it was, I don't know, customer service. When you're going on like a website and with those like chat bots that show up in the chat that shows up in the corner, it's really annoying a lot of the times to sort of get your points across with that and sort of get responses back. And also costs a lot of money for companies to pay people to be sitting on that chat all day. So if you're able to do that with ChatGPT, then that's really powerful. It reduces a lot of cost. You can handle a lot of people coming in at once. And you can generate content and generate sort of reviews or descriptions of your products that are really engineered to make people want to buy them. So it's a really powerful uses of it. So features of ChatGPT, it can generate creative and original responses, human-like responses, a lot of stuff that we've been mentioning before. So some of the ways, in general, I'll sort of go over this a little bit more later on, but how do you access ChatGPT? If one of you guys wants to do this even right now while you're sort of watching the presentation, if you want to go another tab and work through this, you can just go to chat.openai.com. I believe that's the URL. Or just Google ChatGPT, probably one of the first links that shows up. You can log in with either Google account, Microsoft account, or any sort of email address to make an account. You need to have a phone number for registration, and they'll give you a code. You put that in, you get access to the open page, and you can just type in whatever query, whatever thing you want to ask it, and the send a message response, and it'll just generate a response for you. And it'll show up kind of like this on the side where you have all of your conversations. You can create new chats every single time you want to have a new conversation and just ask it whatever you want, and it'll just respond to it. There's no coding necessary, no in-depth technical knowledge necessary. You just go to the website, make an account, and start asking away. ChatGPT key components. So this is sort of a more technical side of things. How is ChatGPT sort of created? I'm only going to be going over a high-level overview of it because there's a lot of in-depth technicalities. There's a lot of in-depth math and AI knowledge required to understand the really fine details of it. But I'll go over an overview of how it's sort of created. Like I mentioned before, the GPT in ChatGPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, which is a pretty complicated sounding name. But essentially, it uses something called a transformer to perform like natural language processing tasks. It uses this architecture called a transformer to generate new content based on the input that it's given. And the reason there's a pre-trained part of it is that transformer has already been trained on previous conversations, previous data, and things like that, so that when you give it input, it has the best sort of like knowledge bank to draw from when it's generating a new output. That's sort of a generative pre-trained transformer. It's a transformer that's been trained before to generate new content to you based on the input. That's the best way I can sort of think of explaining it. So generative, like I mentioned, is statistical models that generates new data and generates new data points similar to those in the original. So in the ChatGPT case, based on the conversations and the information and the research that it's been trained on, it's generating new conversations based on similar to the ones it's heard of. So if it learns that the way we structure like English sentences with a period at the end, and we capitalize the letter I, or like sort of grammar rules like that, that's going to generate grammatically correct responses because they'll learn those rules. Pre-trained, it's been pre-trained with a large data set, and transformer is a sort of a model in artificial intelligence that's really capable and it's really powerful for handling data like text or data that has a sequence to it. So this slide is pretty complicated. I'm not going to go too far into some of the sort of details of the slide, but just in general, the way that a transformer works, this is just the transformer side of things. The way that it works is it has this block or sort of component called an encoder. And an encoder basically takes whatever text that you put into it. Like let's say you say, what is the fastest car in the world? That's the text. That's the sort of thing you ask ChatGPT. It'll take that sort of text and it'll convert it into like mathematical representations or numbers in a way that the computer can actually understand it, not just human text. And then that sort of mathematical representation of it goes into that mathematical representation of it basically goes into the math. It just gets processed over and over again based on some like calculations that ChatGPT does based on the data that's been trained on. Let's say it knows that car in the mathematical representation has. Let me say that again. Let's say you say I want to find the fastest car in the world, or tell me what the fastest car in the world is. It'll take in that sentence, convert it to a mathematical representation, and let's say like we focus on the word car. Whatever representation in math that it does for the word car, it might notice that in its training data, it had a lot of other sort of representations of data that was also called car. So it knows what you're talking about when you're talking about a car. And then when it looks at the previous one, it says fastest car. It'll scan through all the sort of training data, all the sort of models its calculations have been built off of, and see, all right, fastest car. In my training data, there was sort of this one article about, I don't know, a Bugatti being the fastest car. I'm not sure what the actual fastest car is, but it'll say like, oh, this Bugatti in my training data was known as the fastest car, had that same sort of math representation. So it keeps cycling through its data, cycling through its processing, and then eventually it'll take that sort of mathematical representation of it and put it into what's called a decoder, which decodes that math representation back to human readable text and ultimately return you, hey, this Bugatti Veyron or something like that, I don't know, is the fastest car in the world. So it's basically encoding your text into math and then decoding that math into input. And in between that, it's doing a bunch of calculations, bunch of processing, and a bunch of really powerful machine learning to ensure that you actually get the correct response you need. That's sort of a really high-level overview of how it works. So the foundations of ChatGPT are this generative pre-trained transformer, natural language processing, which is being able to take in text as a computer and return text back. It's a large scale. It's been trained on like a very, very large amount of data, so it knows a lot of things and knows a lot of relationships. Context aware. This is one thing that I didn't really mention, but when you're using ChatGPT, one thing you'll notice is that one thing you'll notice about ChatGPT is that it actually maintains conversations. Like if you say, hey, what's the fastest car? And then it says, like, I don't know, Bugatti's the fastest car. And you can ask it like, so what about non-sports cars? You can just say, you can type in, so what about non-sports cars? And it'll remember that, hey, earlier on in this conversation, you asked about what are the fastest cars in the world. So by saying, so what about non-sports cars? You're saying, so what about the fastest car in the world that's not a sports car? Just the same way, like when you're having a conversation with someone, you don't repeat all the information you're talking about over and over again. In the same way, ChatGPT is actually aware of previous conversations you've had with it. It's able to maintain that and take turns in a conversation, which is really crazy when you really think about it. And then on on the sort of developer side of things, they have an API, which basically lets you interact with ChatGPT or make your own sort of models using ChatGPT with code, and you're able to fine tune those models any way that you want. And this slide basically just goes over a little bit about what LLMs are, which essentially it's basically what we were talking about before, which is just models that are pre-trained with a lot of information to generate and understand language. That's sort of essentially what an LLM is, and ChatGPT is an example of an LLM. So this is sort of and one of the LLMs that are really prominent in the world is ChatGPT, and there's a bunch of other ones by different companies, like Google has Bard and other things like that. This is the high level category that ChatGPT falls into. So ChatGPT 3 was sort of trained on a lot of data, almost 570 gigabytes of data, scraped from areas like Reddit, Stack Overflow, Wikipedia, books, GitHub, just anywhere that it can find publicly accessible data it was trained off of. And then it's basically just continues to fine tune that information, fine tune it even further, and then training on conversational data to basically make it the best chat bot that it can be. And so the evolution of GPT, so ChatGPT was not the only ChatGPT that OpenAI created. They've had sort of progressive models as they go. So 1, 2, 3, 3.5, and 4. And as each one grows, you can see that the number of parameters increases slowly but surely. The data set size sort of increases slowly but surely. The amount of layers, the context token size, the number of English words it can generate or understand, sort of increases more and more. The sort of more advanced the model gets, the more things it can understand. And even some new features were added. Like it first had the ability to generate human-like text, then we improved the answers. We reduced the toxic outputs or inappropriate outputs. And then in ChatGPT 4, you can even give it images or numerical data, speech, you can give it voice, and it does a lot of calculations, stuff like that. And that's what the sort of multi-model, unimodel thing is it's able to take in different types of input and still give you the human-like output. And I guess stepping away from the architecture side of things, we have what's called prompt engineering. Prompt engineering might sound really complicated, like, oh, it's a whole other engineering discipline. It's kind of a weird term for like prompt engineering is kind of not the greatest term to use for it, but essentially it's how do I speak to ChatGPT so that it can give me the best response I want. It's not really an advanced technique or anything like that. It's not anything complicated. It's just formatting your answers in a way that you can get the best quality output from ChatGPT. So rather than saying, hey, can you fix my essay? Then it might somewhat fix your essay, but it might not give you exactly what you want. Instead of saying, hey, can you fix my essay? You can say, hey, can you revise my essay for grammatical details and also keep the same style of writing that I had originally? Now that prompt is going to give you a lot better response when you're trying to do that grammar checking and revising, because it'll make sure that it keeps your original style, it'll do grammar check specifically, and it's just more detailed of a prompt than just telling you, okay, hey, can you fix this essay? It's kind of similar to like when you're asking like a friend for help. If you say, hey, can you help me with my computer? They'll say, okay, I can like help you with your computer, I guess. But if you say, hey, my Windows update is like stalling for some reason, hey, can you help me out? Then you're giving a lot more information to your friend and you're able to get a much better response from them as a result of that. That's basically what prompt engineering is, asking better questions to get better answers. Use cases of ChatGPT or GPTs in general is generating a large amount of text. So you can generate a lot of text efficiently. It can translate languages, write essays, summarize stuff, answers questions, but it's been pre-trained. So oftentimes you'll notice when you're asking about something like recent events, especially for older versions of GPT, it'll say, hey, I was trained on data from like 2021 and before, so if you ask me about something that happened in 2023, I won't really know. And it also can't really explain why it's giving the output that it's giving. It's just going to give you a response, but it can't really tell you why it thought that way. But you can use it to sort of create social media content, write and learn code, analyze data, and just a whole bunch of things you can use it for. And this is sort of, if you're interested in developing with ChatGPT, this slide's pretty useful. It'll let you, so ChatGPT is not just a website. You can also access it through code. If any of you guys are really passionate about trying to use ChatGPT in your own sort of way, you can use what's called the OpenAI API. Basically, go to search up OpenAI API, and you set up your sort of account. You select the programming language, and it'll walk you through the process of how do I write code that can send requests to ChatGPT and get responses back. And it's a really powerful tool to integrate in your sort of websites and stuff like that. You can make like a ChatGPT bot, like a website that, I don't know, responds to you only like with Pokemon information or something like that. You can make your own customized version of ChatGPT specifically for your use case and do so really easily through the API that they've provided. How do we integrate ChatGPT in industry? So what are some of the industrial uses of it? In schools and education, you can use it to answer questions quickly for teachers who have a lot of students. You can use it as a research assistant, as a writing assistant. Although your teachers might have different opinions about whether or not you want to use ChatGPT for writing your essays, it still can help. ChatGPT in the medical field, it can be used for diagnosis. It can be used for medical research, looking up drug interactions, a lot of powerful things if it's trained for the specific use cases. In retail, like let's say you go on Amazon, you want to find the best vacuum cleaner under $100. ChatGPT can be used to sort of filter the results that come out in a way that it only finds you the best vacuum cleaners that are the highest rating and only under $100. It can, like I mentioned before, give really cool descriptions of items to make you really want to buy them. It can track sort of orders. It can do market research based on saying, hey, a lot of people who have bought this item also like to buy this item. And you can use sort of ChatGPT models for that. And improving the search functionality. Like, let's say you don't know the name of an item, but you know, like, hey, I want like a gray air fryer that can handle like this many items inside of it. Using sort of ChatGPT or other models like it, you can analyze that text and be like, all right, I understand what this person is trying to say. Let me convert it into filters that actually work on the website and give you the best response. And stuff like travel as well. You can say, I want to go to a beach in the summer and I want the beach to be not too hot and I want to go on these dates. Can you sort of plan me a trip accordingly? And I'll sort of work through this example later on too, but it's sort of really powerful for stuff like that. ChatGPT Plus. So this is sort of a very brief overview about like ChatGPT 4 and ChatGPT Plus, what are some of the advantages or disadvantages of having it. ChatGPT Plus, essentially, it's a subscription model that OpenAI released. And right now, ChatGPT is completely free for everyone. I want to make that clear. Like anyone can go in the OpenAI website and just use ChatGPT for free. There's no cost for it. And it's still a very, very, very powerful model, even with a completely free model. Like essentially, a lot of people wouldn't really need to buy ChatGPT Plus. It doesn't really have a use case for most people who are trying to use ChatGPT. But there is a subscription model for it. If you do want to pay for a slightly better version of ChatGPT, you can pay for what's called a ChatGPT Plus, which costs $20 per month, similar to sort of like a Netflix subscription or something. And some of the key features that it provides are, let's say there's times where ChatGPT has a lot of people using it. They'll give priority and ensure that people who have ChatGPT Plus can use it, even if other people can't. You get access to new features and improvements faster. You get a better version of the model, and you get the ability to have like plugins and things like that as well. So ChatGPT 4 is sort of a slightly advanced version of the current ChatGPT. I don't want you guys to think it's like a completely revolutionary, insanely improved version. It's a slight improvement, but it's a noticeable improvement. Although the current free ChatGPT is plenty good, and it will pretty much answer any use case you need completely free of charge. One thing that ChatGPT 4 does have is that it allows you to input images and videos as well as text, which can be powerful for the right use cases. So in terms of the numbers, ChatGPT is supposedly 10 times more advanced. Although when you're actually using it, and you're actually like typing and using text with it, you'll notice it's slightly advanced, but not in a crazy out there sort of like really revolutionary way. So it is more advanced statistically, like by the actual size of the model, but the responses that ChatGPT, the free version, give are already so good that it's hard in some cases to notice a difference. One of the key things though is providing responses to a larger amount of text. You're able to put in more prompts, put in a larger prompt, and get a larger output as well, and also work with images and videos. Yeah. So here, another big thing is you can handle it with different languages. So ChatGPT currently can work with multiple languages, but GPT-4 does a much better job of that. That's probably where you notice the biggest difference. And it'll also work a lot faster. ChatGPT-4, for the tokens that you give it, like ChatGPT originally is pretty fast, but GPT-4 is extremely fast depending on the use case you use it for. So as an example, you give in a prompt that says, Andrew is free from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Joanne is free from noon to 2 p.m. and then 3:30 to 5 p.m. Hannah is available from noon for half an hour and then 4 to 6. What are some options for a 30-minute meeting between these three people? The original ChatGPT might give an output like this, sort of listing availability and giving you, hey, it's a 30-minute window from 4 to 4:30, so you can start it at 4. GPT-4, a better response. It might say, hey, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., noon to 2 p.m., 3:30 to 5 p.m., 12:30, noon to 12:30 p.m. Instead of going from 4, you can actually schedule a meeting at 12 p.m. to 12:30 p.m. It'll give you a more concise answer and sometimes a more accurate answer as well, like in this case. And another thing that ChatGPT Plus has, or ChatGPT 4 has, is the ability to use plugins. Plugins are very powerful because they let you use ChatGPT for not just like text response type things. Once you upgrade to ChatGPT Plus, you have the ability to add plugins. And these plugins can be things like Expedia plugins to sort of book travel, like focus ChatGPT on doing travel. They can be like math plugins so that when you're actually typing in math problems, it can answer them much more accurately and give you a much better response back. So there's sort of really powerful additions and tweaks to the current ChatGPT to make it really powerful for really specific use cases. So what are some of the problems associated with ChatGPT? So some of the problems associated with ChatGPT are, I guess some of the problems associated with it is the sort of quality of data that it was trained on. It was trained on a lot of data from a lot of different places, but not all that data is necessarily correct, or not all the data is necessarily up to date. So that's why I can sometimes give incorrect answers, because it doesn't even know the correct answer. It can't access the internet and like look up things. It's just using the data that it was trained on. It needs to be fine-tuned for certain scenarios. So this is where the fine-tuning portion comes in, where it can be trained to be really good at a wide range of things, but let's say you have a really specific use case, like trying to format data or trying to use it to give you financial advice. It would need to be sort of fine-tuned for that scenario in order to really give you the best response. But instead, it's been fine-tuned to give you the best response to an okay or better response to a wide range of topics, rather than a really good response for one topic and a not so good response for another one. Human review. So ChatGPT doesn't necessarily always give you accurate answers, doesn't always give you correct or even the best answers. So you always need to make sure that you look over the answers they give you to see if it really answers what you need it to, and it's actually accurate or correct. It can't access the internet, at least now, or with the free version of ChatGPT. It can't access the internet, so it can't look up things. It can't get the most recent data. There's some privacy issues, obviously, with the data that it was trained on, ethical concerns with, hey, is it going to replace jobs or anything like that, and keeping up with developments. Like software engineering and new sort of technologies are continuously changing day by day. So it's hard to sort of update this large model to keep up with those things. And I know someone someone mentioned before that do you think ChatGPT has sort of the impact of eliminating jobs? And so I want to sort of talk a little bit about that, which was so the impact that my personal opinion on the ChatGPT impact on jobs is that rather than deleting a lot of jobs, it'll sort of enhance the productivity of a lot of people. That's sort of my side of things. So let's say we take it like a sample of 10 U.S. workers. 6% of those sort of six of these 10 workers will probably have a bit of their work tasks impacted by GPT technology, whether it's doing just manual data input or summarizing or editing text, things like that might have their work impacted by GPT technologies. And two of the workers out of that 10 might have a large portion of the work, like 50% of the work impacted by GPT, where a lot of their work relies on these sort of manual tasks or things that can be easily automated. And because of that, a lot of their work might be affected. But then there's obviously going to be jobs, sort of like manual labor jobs or really fine-tuned skill-based jobs like mechanics or plumbers, sort of things that need a lot of training, a lot of experience in a trade that a computer can't really do anything like that. It can maybe give you advice on how to, but it can't change anything about that job. So some of the more manufacturing, agriculture, manual labor, critical thinking, training, skill-based, science-based jobs are ones that ChatGPT is not really going to have much of an impact on because these are sort of specialized, or they're not going to be really have the ability to be impacted by ChatGPT a lot. Some of the ones that might have a large impact are sort of these high exposure jobs where stuff like writing, programming, information processing, things that require sort of routine or repetitive work or not a lot of training on the job. That's some of the areas where ChatGPT might impact work. Like it might be impacting like writers or things like that. But that's where sort of legislation needs to be established, and that's where sort of people need to consider that ChatGPT can't fully replace the skill or sort of personal spin that people have on things. It's more sort of going to give a general response every single time. I'm not sure if you guys have been keeping up with the news, but things about like the actors strike and the writer strike that's been going on in Hollywood. A lot of those are based on both wages and also making sure AI doesn't take their jobs, because they want to make sure that these companies aren't going to try to eliminate writers to just use ChatGPT or other large language models. They want to actually make sure they have their jobs. A lot of cases, ChatGPT can't write a movie as good as like someone who writes like, I don't know, Inception would. Like it doesn't have that personal sort of spin on it. At least that's my sort of spin on things. Like I was mentioning before, there's sort of low exposure jobs where GPT's impact is going to be relatively low, and high exposure jobs where GPT might change a lot of things, but still I don't think it will fully replace any sort of jobs like that. Stuff like proofreaders and copy markers, accountants, translators might have their work impacted, but again, I think it's just going to influence and enhance their work, not sort of take it away. So here I'm going to be going through a few examples of ChatGPT, some of the use cases, some of the prompt engineering sort of examples, and then I'll go into answering some of your questions as well as showing you a demo of a lot of the powerful things that ChatGPT can do. So let's say you have an interview coming up on SQL, and you want to generate some sort of interview questions for that, or you have a finance interview, you have a journalism interview, you want to generate some interview questions. You can ask it, hey, can you generate me some interview questions for these specific topics? And yeah, it can give you actual interview questions that might be asked, and you can sort of work through it and have a conversation with it to answer those questions and get feedback on them as well. Let's say you want to get a sample resume. You want to write like an engineer resume for yourself, write a resume for someone else. It can give you a lot of cool bullet points you can talk about, sort of specialize your own individual needs. Although I don't recommend writing your resume with ChatGPT because you actually need to put your own experience on there, not just generic experience. Let's say you give it a bunch of interests and you want to make a frequency graph for it. It can do that. It might not be accurate, so just still go in and double check it, but it'll give you an idea of how to do it. Let's say you want to make an R script bar chart for the following interests. So let's say you have these interests and you want to be able to visualize them really well. You say, hey, can you make like an R script, which R is a language, like a coding language for the statistics type of things. Hey, can you make me a bar chart that'll go over these following interests? And sure, it'll give you the R script code. You put it into RStudio. It'll tell you how to run it as well. You put it in and you run it, and you get a really cool looking bar chart as a result of it. I've actually used this use case before because a lot of times writing this sort of code is menial labor. So I'll use it to make sort of bar charts and things like that. Can you take this comma separated list and make it like a quote separated list? A lot of times when you're trying to like code things out, I don't know how many of you have experienced this, but your code needs input in a certain way and you have a lot of input that's not in that format. You can just use ChatGPT to automate that sort of process that would otherwise just be really tedious work on your own. This is sort of like, let's say I want to ask, hey, is actually using this sort of ChatGPT presentation a good idea for high schoolers? Will they be interested in it? Yeah, they'll be interested in it. Here are some reasons why. Kind of meta, but you see what I mean. Some coding examples, like doing really complicated code can sometimes be a bit more difficult, but it's still really powerful in that sense. But let's say you want to do something really basic, like a Python program for Fibonacci sequence. You can just generate you the code. It'll comment out portions of the code to actually tell you what's going on. You can ask it to make more comments or less comments, explain the code as it goes, and it'll even give you information on what the function's even doing. One of the really cool things you can actually do is you can actually make presentations on ChatGPT, either through Visual Basic Script or just through text-based like this. We can say, hey, can you create a five-page presentation slide for artificial intelligence? It gives you this sort of output. You log into Microsoft Word. You create a sort of new Word document. You paste that in. You paste all this information in this format that it gave you. And you export it to a PowerPoint presentation. And you actually make the PowerPoint presentation for you with the sort of design ideas as well. It actually take that text and give you a PowerPoint as a result, which is something really cool that I didn't know you could do, but I actually figured out you can do it, and it's really, really powerful. And there are some alternatives to ChatGPT as well. Some of them are not as powerful. Some of them are more specialized. Like this one, Perplexity.ai, is an alternative to ChatGPT where it actually gives you the sources of its information and you can access the internet. So you can say, who is the president of India right now? And it'll give you, like, you use like these bookmarks with like 2, 3, 4, 5, stuff like that. These connect to sources on the top where it actually got this information, and it'll actually have access to the internet, so it can do current data as well. So it's really powerful for stuff like research. Then you might want to check out Perplexity.ai. Some other alternatives for really specific use cases is for writing, there's stuff like ChatSonic. For coding, Copilot and Code Whisperer are two really big ones that can actually, like, in your sort of code editors, you can just say, I want to make a function that does this, and I'll just write the code for you. Research alternatives, other like alternatives that Google made, like Bard AI, which we'll talk a little bit more about. Productivity, social media, Microsoft alternatives, translation. DeepL is one that I really like. If you're in classes that require, like language classes that require translation, Google Translate might not always be the best bet, but DeepL is actually very good at translating. And conversation, like Character AI is a really, really, really fun one to play around with, because you can basically make your favorite characters, like, I don't know, SpongeBob, say whatever you want. And it's really, really funny to play around with, and really, really funny to like send videos to your friends and stuff like that as well. And Bard is essentially Google's version of ChatGPT. It's trained on a different sort of conversational model, but it's also free. It supports programming languages, and it has image support in the free version, which is really powerful. And Bard also has the ability to access the internet to have real-time information on its free version too. So you can sort of try both out and see what responses they give you. And in terms of one of the really big things that people like talking about is, are software engineers going to be replaced by these sort of things? Not necessarily, because software engineers have really high quality code. They have customized solutions. They have control over the development process, and they have experience and expertise in sort of areas that ChatGPT can't really have. So ChatGPT can be used for like really speed coding, really like small scripts that don't really need expertise. It's easy to use and learn, and it's cost effective, but it's not as powerful and can't handle complex situations like an actual software engineer can. And so that's about it for the presentation side of things. But right now, I'm going to go into answering a lot of your questions first, and then we'll go into a demo as well about some of the use cases of ChatGPT. So going through the questions, how is ChatGPT 4 different, and what are plugins exactly? So ChatGPT 4 is different in that it can use images. It's a little bit more powerful. And plugins, I'll show in a little bit, but essentially, they're kind of like extensions. If you like, in your browser when using extensions, let's see an extension for giving you like honey, which gives you like coupons, something like that, or extensions about other things. It's sort of an extension to ChatGPT where it says, hey, now you can access Expedia information, or you can access Wolfram Alpha for math. You can access a bunch of different things. Parameters are essentially variables in an equation. So let's say when you're doing like math right now in high school, you have like y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and you have the y-intercept and everything like that. Those m and b, the slope and the y-intercept, are parameters in the equation of that line. So parameters are just sort of variables you can change around and mess around with to sort of change the way the model works and fine-tune the math of it to give you the best response possible. The one about ChatGPT eliminating jobs, I talked a little bit about that, but I don't think that ChatGPT has the capability of eliminating jobs per se. Maybe some really menial tasks like transcription and stuff like that might be impacted a lot. But I think more so it'll make people reevaluate their work or be able to do more specialized work while leaving a lot of the really boring, tedious tasks to ChatGPT and have more time, more ability to focus on things that have really high impact for them. Earlier, I don't mean to step back. So in what ways does ChatGPT need so much money to run? One of the ways it needs so much money to run is that, one, it has to be able to, you're running a website that is handling millions of users a day. And in that sense, you need a lot of servers to run the website off of. You need a lot of bandwidth for everyone to have access to it. And you have to do it all across the world because people are accessing it from all across the world. So that takes a lot of money to set that up. And also running the model itself, since it's such a large model, since it's such a complicated model, it needs a lot of really powerful GPUs and processing power to run it. So in that sense, this sort of combination of having the website be publicly accessible and also running such a powerful model makes it so expensive to run every single day. And are we able to use ChatGPT to make a game and then publish what it made? So that's a bit of a tricky scenario. So there are some AIs that let you have completely free use about what is outputted from them. So I don't know, stuff like Midjourney will give you completely free access to use the outputs in it, like the images that it makes, however you want it. ChatGPT, I still need to check exactly on what the copyright policy is. But one of the considerations you have to have is, since ChatGPT is trained on things from the internet, it's trained on like code and stuff that might already exist. You have to make sure that the output that it gives you isn't like accidentally drawing on someone else's copyright. Like you might think that the output it gives you is completely unique and use it, and that might be all fine and well. But in another scenario, the code that it outputs could have a portion that is copyrighted from someone else, or have an image or a sprite that's copyrighted by someone else. And in that case, you might run into some trouble. But in general, you can probably check that up on, or I can also check that as well on the copyright policy of it. And just making sure that while you use ChatGPT to make your game or something like that, you keep in mind that you make your own assets, you make your own images and stuff like that, and you use everything in a way that is copyright friendly. Then you should be fine. But then again, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know the legal side of things all that well. All right. Let me switch my screen over to hold on, what should I switch my screen over to? Let's see. Boom, 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 boom. Let's see if this works. Oh, okay. I can see myself over and over again. All right, yes, this will work. So let me actually zoom in a bunch. Let me know if you guys can sort of see the text that I'm putting in. If it's like too zoomed in, not too zoomed, I need to zoom in a little bit more, and let me know if that's readable for you guys. All right, cool. Someone said it's good. I do have ChatGPT Premium just for this month. I usually don't use it because I don't really see a use case for it, but I wanted to showcase it, so I just got it for this month itself. So let's try some things out. Let's try some sort of things that I think are pretty useful for ChatGPT. Let's say this is just the original ChatGPT model. Let's say I don't know. How can I explain how ChatGPT works to a toddler? It's pretty fancy. Like it can just take in what sort of text I gave it. It's like say, hey, how do I explain ChatGPT to a toddler? And it's like, all right, explaining an AI model to a toddler can be challenging, but I'll do my best to simplify it. And it does it, and it responds in a way to sort of break down the information that ChatGPT, the structure of how ChatGPT works, and tell it to a toddler in a way that they would understand. I mean, that's pretty crazy. Even if you ask like me how to explain ChatGPT to a toddler, I'll probably run into a lot of difficulties on how to do that. And it just generated all of this within almost a second. Someone just asked me to produce an image of a dog in space on Mars. Okay. Let me see if I can actually pull up DALL-E. So DALL-E is another model from OpenAI. It's separate from ChatGPT, but this one is for creating realistic images. So let's see. Do I have any credits? I might not have any credits. Let me see. If I don't have any credits, then I might have to try this another time. But I might not have any credits. Okay, I can probably switch this up and try it out on a different model, but I'll keep that in mind. And ChatGPT Plus have an output of images. I believe ChatGPT 4 should be able to, but I haven't really played around with it much, but you can try it out. Let's see if it has DALL-E models or anything like that. So in the meantime, while I'm trying to work this, let's see if this actually works. In the meantime, I can also try this sort of Expedia plugin. So let's say I want to plan a trip. Say I want to go to New York from Seattle on August 10th. Can you help me plan a trip? I plan leaving New York on the 15th of August. See, look, it's using this, it's keeping track of my conversation, and it's using that sort of information to work that. And with the ChatGPT 4, it's using this Expedia plugin to get information like flights, lodging options. It has like hotels from the Expedia ones. It's using information currently from the internet. It's really powerful on how it does that sort of thing. Yeah, like it's giving you the star rating, the average nightly price, special deals that are possible, and overall, like this is information that would be very difficult for me to get just looking up on my own, but it's able to just plan this trip out for me almost instantaneously. And yeah, we can actually look at the images of the hotels. It can say, all right, now continue this conversation. If you tell me about which hotel you like, and I can tell you about flights, I can tell you about some activities nearby the hotel, car rentals, everything like that. Stuff that's really, really cool. Like I can just talk to ChatGPT and plan out an entire trip, which is kind of crazy. I'm not going to go that much further with it, but the sort of idea of that is what's really powerful. Now let's see if this AI generation works. I haven't actually tried this one out yet, so I have no guarantees. Can you generate an image of a dog as an astronaut on Mars? I don't actually know if this one works. We'll try it. Oh. Okay, a little buggy, but let's see. Oh. There is indeed a dog. Not on Mars. Looks more like the moon, but there is a dog as an astronaut. That's pretty fancy. And you can do that straight from here. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So we can actually just generate images as well. I know DALL-E, and one of the really cool ones you guys can check out is this one called the Midjourney. Midjourney is really, really powerful. It's probably one of the best like image generation models out there, and you use it through Discord. Like that's actually how you use Midjourney. But yeah, you can essentially just create crazy detailed images from just a few words, and it's very powerful at what it does. Let me see if I have DALL-E credits on another account, but I might not be able to access that. Let's see. Can you generate a dog on Mars realistic? Oh, I do have credits. See, look, fortune telling, Shiba Inu, reading your fate in a giant hamburger, digital art is kind of crazy. It can just generate that from just text. Anyone else have, can I try Midjourney? Let me actually see if I can get that set up really quickly. Like that is, these are not greatest examples because it can be a lot more powerful than just this, but there are some very, very cool things that it can do. Let me see if I can just show you guys some Midjourney examples. Midjourney showcase. Like these are all AI generated images that Midjourney has created. So let's take a look at, I don't know, this one. It's showcasing like it's a image of like a river, like a forest on both sides, and all they typed in was cool rich water off the Canadian coastline, and it generated this image as a result, which is crazy to think of. You have like the cat, a fox skull, All of this is just generated completely from text. And these images you also have full copyright of. I know Midjourney gives you full copyright of the images you generate. So it's pretty cool how it's able to do that. Like this bee or something like that. It's like it's almost photorealistic in the way that's represented, except it's completely AI generated. Stuff like these flowers, you would think it was like a photo, but no, it's AI generated. Same with this field. It's really powerful in the way that it does things. But yeah, that's sort of a lot of the key things I want to showcase with you guys. I don't know if you have any last minute sort of prompts you want me to test out. But yeah, that's a lot of things I want to explain about ChatGPT and sort of the presentation that I wanted to give. So if you guys don't have any last minute questions or last minute prompts you want to share, then I think we should be good to end it here for today. I'll just wait like a minute or so in case anyone else has anything. But yeah, if not, you guys should feel free to head out, and we'll see you guys next week for the next set of webinars for the Young Scholar program. But thank you guys so much for coming out here today, and it's been great presenting to you guys.